Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today, I am speaking with Corey Hirsch, who is an Olympic silver medalist, a former NHL goaltender, mental health advocate, and a professional speaker. And we are also welcoming back Dr. Diane McIntosh. I love talking to Diane. She always has all the advice we need, especially to get through this pandemic. She's a respected psychiatrist, author, educator, mental health advocate, and TELUS's chief neuroscience officer. So Corey and Diane, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, well, thank you. Anytime I get to talk with Diane, it's a special day for me. And thank you, Tamara. This is great. I'm excited about this. Let's do it.
Corey, I mean, a lot of people know you from your hockey career. And now you're working with the Canucks. You're part of their broadcast, and so like hockey has been your life, and that's what most people know you from. But there's a whole new group of people that are familiar with you for another reason, and that's because of your openness about your journey with your mental illness, and you've been really open about it and giving with your story. How was that for you, like deciding to open up in a way you weren't used to?
I was actually terrified because of the platform that I have of having played in the Olympics and the National Hockey League. So all I knew was I had to get my story out there. I had never really met anybody else with obsessive compulsive disorder, and I never realized. I had my own story, but I never realized quite, I guess the word would be how deadly it can be. And people don't take mental health serious in that sense. And I think they should. And I met another player who, we sat and he was in rehab, and I asked him a question, and I said, "Oh, you're in rehab for your knee or whatever?" And he was an active player. He should have been playing in a game. I saw him at a Coyotes game in Arizona. And he's like, "No, I'm in rehab for alcohol and drugs." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well," so I figured out he wasn't. He must have had some, personal issues, because usually substance abuse and mental health go hand in hand. And I said, "Hey, let's go for a coffee. Let's just hang out." I thought he might, could use a friend. So we went to the Starbucks, we had a coffee, and I'd never really told anybody my story up to that point. And this is 20 years after diagnosis. So if you're out there and you're thinking that, I feel so poorly I don't feel good about, whatever, because I haven't told my story. Nah, you know what? It took me 20 years. It wasn't like it happened, and the next day I came out with my stuff. It's very personal. It's very difficult. But get back to my story. I just spewed my story, really, and nobody but my family had really known. And he looked at me and he's like, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I'm going through." And his mom had to resuscitate him, twice from fentanyl overdoses, his own mom. And I looked at him and I was like, I got to get my story out there, because I didn't realize there was a lot of other people out there like me. And then the more I got my story out there, the more people I met with obsessive compulsive disorder that I'd never thought there was that many people out there. And most of them had the same story, that at one point they tried to take their own life. And OCD seems as people are like, "Oh, it's cute. It's a hand washing. Oh, that's all that was, so what? You're clean, right?" No, it goes way beyond that. I ended up getting my story. I was going to write a book, and then the Players Tribune came up to me, and they're an online publication owned by Derek Jeter, who's a former New York Yankee. And they said, "We'd love you to tell your story," because I went through some friends of mine that helped me out, Catherine McCauley and Lana Quinn, who do a lot of work for the Canucks. And I told them my story, and then they set it up for me to get interviewed by the Players Tribune. And I talked about it. I just spewed myself. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it right. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to hide it. I talked about suicide. I talked about obsessive compulsive disorder, what it's really like. I talked about, masculinity. I talked about a little bit about everything, and I just threw it all out there. And when it hit, it was like had 2 million hits in under 2 hours. And it was like one of the fastest. I mean, we're talking like Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron had, he had articles in the Players Tribune, and none of them hit quite that fast. And it was at that point where I was like, wow, this is a bigger thing than it is. And the love and support I got out of that was incredible. Not one negative comment. And I think the world was ready for it.
So Diane, for people that aren't familiar with OCD, what is it? How would people recognize that in themselves, maybe?
Well, I think that's one of the challenges is OCD looks different for every person, and we all have that sense, like Corey said, oh, you wash your hands a little bit too much. Oh, I'm so OCD today. It's a really serious disorder that used to be categorized under an anxiety disorder, and anxiety is an important part of it. But people have either obsessions, compulsions, or both. And obsessions are things that your thoughts, feelings, ideas, urges that keep coming back, even though you try to push them away. All you can do to try to stop from having these thoughts or feelings, and usually they're very unpleasant. They have to do with harm, usually worried about harm coming to someone else, often things that don't fit with what you want or how you feel. And then some people have compulsions, which are a drive to do something, whether it's in your head or something physically, that tries to really soften those obsessions or stop them, to counteract them. So everyone looks a little bit different. There are different ways, different kinds of obsessions, different kinds of compulsions, and that's what makes it difficult. There's probably 1,000 different ways or more that OCD can present. But like Corey has learned, once he got his story out, many people struggle with this, about 1% of the population, and it really has an impact on your ability to function and enjoy your life.
But Diane, I'll just say what it's like it's so difficult to describe, isn't it, Diane? It really is. It's for people. I have sexual intrusive thoughts. So anything that is considered taboo or, horrific sexually, that's what I have. And it's, I was terrified of getting HIV and giving it to everybody else. And that's kind of another way. It's kind of a harm thing, I guess. So they're all kind of mixed together. But the way I describe it, and I try to describe it the best way, if you've ever seen the movie Tommy Boy, which is a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, it's my favorite movie, go rent it right now because it's awesome. He's driving down the road one way, and if say it's 2-lane traffic, one lane coming at you, you're going the other way, and you have that little impulse thought of jerking the wheel into the other lane. We've all had it. Right. And it's someone that doesn't have an OCD brain would go, oh, that was a silly thought. And they would go on with their day. Someone like me with an OCD brain would go, oh, why did I think that? Did I want to hurt somebody? Did I want to hurt someone in my car? Did I want to hurt the other people? And then it's an extreme amount of caring that I would go home, and then eventually I would try and figure out if I wanted to do that in my own head and never come to an answer. But so I would just stop driving my car. That's an OCD brain. That's the best way I can describe it to people. So
my word, Corey, is sticky.
Please go, Diane.
An OCD brain is sticky.
Yeah.
Like you said, most people, they have that thought, oh my gosh, I could pull into that other lane, and then that was silly, and then on with your day. But if you have OCD, you get on a thought and you can't detach yourself from the thought, and it holds you captive. And on that harm thing, Corey was talking about a fear that maybe he could get HIV and spread it to other people. That people don't understand the torture that goes along with having a mental illness. And Corey's fear was always about, could I harm someone else? So I can't do anything. I shouldn't do this or that or the other thing because I could harm someone else. And that constant self-doubt, that constant fear I could hurt someone I love, it's a torture. Think about a mom with a new baby who has OCD symptoms, and she has this thought, I could put my baby in a microwave. The last thing on earth that she wants to do, is put her baby in the microwave. But why did I think that? Maybe, could I do that? Could that happen? Oh my, and who's going to tell anybody that they had that thought because someone's going to take my baby away? It's really a slow torture that people experience.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and sorry, I'll just finish this. Diane, that's awesome the way you just described that. That's the best way I can describe it. But we're typically people that care too much on one end of the scale. right? That you have your mass murderers on one end that have zero conscience. We're too far on the other end, right? So you have to kind of, I like to, very kind people that would never want to hurt anybody. So like Diane said, a woman that's like that cares so much about everything, for that thought to be in her head is just the worst thing they could ever imagine. And then it just cycles, right? Had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only time it left me was when I was sleeping or playing hockey. That was it.
I was going to say, how did you play hockey? How did you, professional sports at the level you played at in professional hockey and then the Olympics? How could you get into the space you needed to be in to be the player you were?
Yeah. So at the Olympics, I was fine. The thing about OCD, and Diane, maybe you can explain this after me, is that I can tell you the day, time, and place I was where things just kind of broke, where it just kind of, I had a great childhood. My parents were great. I had I can't really say I had any trauma. I don't know why OCD was part of my thing, but I was probably about 2 months after the Olympics where, like I said, it's just something broke in my brain, I would say. But there's a long story behind that. But I just eventually decided that I was just going to try to live with it and figure it out. That was after I made a suicide attempt that was unsuccessful. That was after panic, just basically being debilitated. I found a way to kind of live with it. And then, from there, the ice was my sanctuary. It really was, because you're distracted, and I just would focus on hockey. But the minute I stepped off the ice, came right back, right? It came right back to my brain. But I will say this, and I'll say this to anybody else that's listening that has mental health issues or obsessive compulsive disorder. I made the NHL with full-blown obsessive compulsive disorder. I was on the NHL all-rookie team. And what I mean by that isn't bragging. It's not being, it means that, like, holy crap, people are stronger than you think you are. And if you have a mental health issue, you are stronger than you think you are. And you can do that too. If I can do it, you can do it too. And Diane, maybe you can, I'll throw it over to you with, with that moment in time and why. Is there a reason OCD? I still to this day don't know.
Corey, you're pretty
you
typical.
You go.
I mean, should I step away, Corey? Should I just move away? Are you good now?
No. So the problem is I'm in media. So
now
is
you're
like,
in media.
I like
see.
To make
Yeah,
it
I get it
me,
now.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Diane, Diane.
I know, but Diane,
all
he
over
makes a good point. Like, how can someone who is struggling so much off the ice go on the ice and perform like that? Like, does that happen in other workplaces too? Where, well, it must, because mental illness is everywhere. We have this stigma. We still don't talk about it. We still don't want to admit that we might be taking medication or seeing somebody or whatever it might be. So how do, not only Corey, but how do people that go into the office every day, what happens that we can do those things?
Now, I'm going to give my opinion here, but Corey, I don't want to speak for you. Elite athletes are resilient individuals anyway. They've been performing at a high level, going with the wins and losses, since many of them since they were in diapers. So you got a resilient group here. Corey had that, what seemed like a sudden onset of illness, and it's at the typical time in his teen years. But there were other things going on in the background. He was vulnerable to a degree, but unfortunately, when OCD starts, it's often like that. It feels like a switch turned on. And unfortunately, with OCD also, it's nonstop. Once it starts, it hardly turns off. But like he said, when he's got something else that he can focus on, and he's an elite athlete, he's on the ice, he's able to actually switch to another part of his brain. But as soon as he has a moment to think, boom, he's back at it again. So the other piece I wanted to mention, and Corey, you may not agree with me, you persevered because you were so resilient despite everything that was going on in your head, but eventually you had to stop. I mean, yeah. I often think what could have been from Corey, because if he played as he did, with this constant OCD going on in the background, feeling suicidal, not knowing where to go, not having any support. Imagine what could have been had that not been going on, where he could have gone, because you didn't have the career that you could have had you had the help earlier.
No, thanks, Diana. You don't mind if I just go cry in the corner over here because I didn't. You know what? Thank you, Diane, for saying that. The way and Diane is 1,000% correct, is that eventually the wheels came off, right? It's like if you have a broken leg, you can't just walk around with a broken leg and pretend it didn't happen for 3 years and hide it from everybody. Eventually, you got to get it fixed, right? Or you can't walk around and with heart disease and just go, nope, everything's good here. I mean, eventually your body's going to come back, and it's no different, for your brain. But I will say this, Diane, you are right. I do often, and I struggle with that sometimes, wonder where my career could have gone. But I also I don't believe everything happens for a reason, because there's things in my life that I don't know why they happened, but I do believe that you are where you're supposed to be. And I believe right now, as a mental health advocate and working with Diane and being on the show, I've gotten more out of being a mental health advocate in my life than any win I've ever gotten. I would trade my silver medal to save somebody, if that's what it meant, right? Like any win that I ever had in the National Hockey League doesn't compare to the things that I'm doing today. And I hate to say it, but I'm a pretty big deal. I don't know if you guys know that, but I'm a.
I know.
I got to deal with it constantly.
Yeah, exactly. Diane's like, oh God, yeah, here he goes. Yeah. But exactly. So
I mean, Corey, it's really refreshing to talk to somebody who's so open about it, because I think that we do see our elite athletes, if you will, as these superheroes who everything's perfect. You have money, you have fame, you can play at a level that most people can't. Everything is very glamorous and wonderful. But it's a pretty I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a professional athlete, but from the outside looking in, it seems that, especially in, quite a few of them, it's very macho, and it's very there's no room for weakness, and mental illness would be considered a weakness for many. So what do you say to young kids now who are coming up and they're playing their sports and stuff, and if they're struggling, like, what's your advice to the younger generation?
Yeah. So this is what I say. I say, if you know who Michael Phelps is one of the greatest swimmers in the history of the world. 23 Olympic gold medals. He suffers from anxiety and depression. So don't tell me that somebody with mental health issues is weak. You're actually probably stronger for what you've gone through than the average person that's just out there. That's, and it doesn't mean that, you wish to have a mental health issue so that you're stronger in your sport. But you do learn sport is important for everybody, because Diane's hit it right on the head. I learned resilience. And that's why I think it's so important for kids to be involved in something, whether it's art, whether it's, some sort of school project or, sport. It just teaches you resilience. So if there's a kid out there right now, there is no reason why you can't become successful. Like when I was going through it, I looked at I was thinking I was 21, 22, and I was like, what the hell am I going to be like when I'm 50? How am I going to get through this? I'm going to be doomed to this for the rest of my life. And I'm not, right? I've gone on to do some really cool things. Diane and I have a podcast coming out with the Players Tribune. It's called Blindsided. We get to interview people like Bubba Watson, Kurt Warner, Kevin Love. That was a shameless plug, by the way. But anyways, it's just, and being an athlete, people look up to us like we're superhuman, and we're just people like everybody else. And, I know Diane, like, she just gets giddy around me because
the star
she's
power,
just
right?
all, yeah. Isn't that true?
I just feel like if I can bask in the reflection. But Corey, something you said that I thought was so important, which is, my Olympic medal, my wins, they don't mean as much as what I can do for others. And on our podcast, we ask everyone, what's your greatest achievement? And that's usually, I hold that till the end. That's one of my last questions. So I'm never surprised that it isn't the Super Bowl or the NBA championship. And it never has been, not once. It's always when I got to hand the Stanley Cup to my brother or, you know, my children, or it's all the things that people think are the ultimate goal in someone's life and the greatest moment are usually how they've helped someone else or they've basked in the joy and happiness and success of others, which is really heartening. I must say.
Listening to you both right now, I'm thinking about when Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, when she didn't do press that day. And it was to protect her mental health. And boy, people got mad about that. Like, how dare she? And who does she think she is? And what do you mean your mental health? And what do you mean? And it really made me step back and think, I never really considered that angle of it for a tennis player or a hockey player or a football player or whoever, right? And that, because I mean, you know, watch the Canucks right now, and like the media are hard on them, and that's I know it's part of the job, but it's also if you're also a human being, right? And you're being asked, you're being pelted with stuff. So I really loved that Naomi Osaka did that, but it sure came with a lot of people who said, "How dare you?" Does that add to that stigma again? Like, don't use your mental health as an excuse. Don't, I don't know.
Well, that's where we still are in society, because people there, whether they're your fan or not, they want to see the best against the best. And if one of the best pulls out, they're like, oh, they don't get to see that. And they're more selfish in the terms of they really don't care what you're going through. They just want their sports. So there still is a stigma. Diane, we went through a thing where we talked about Tuukka Rask in the bubble. Remember, he left us to go and left his family or go to see his family because he was struggling and they were struggling. His wife just had a baby. And the comments were ruthless in the sense that you make $5 million a year. What kind of problems do you have? And why, that just suck it up and go play. People were pissed at him because he made $5 million a year. And let's go back to your comment that you said about I have money and fame. Well, I don't have money. I'm divorced and I have 3 kids. So let's just set the record straight. All right. I'm kidding. But as far as it was just ruthless. Diane, remember you wrote an article about it, Diane, and it was how people see just because you have money, they think that everything should be okay. But it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a professional athlete, or work in the garbage truck or construction, or my dad's in construction, and good Lord, I know he's got undiagnosed mental health issues. I hope he doesn't listen to this, by the way. No, he's a good man. He's a really good man. But it doesn't matter. And Diane, it doesn't matter.
What does that, I guess, I'm thinking about somebody who's listening, who's struggling with their mental health. Maybe they can't go into work and say to their boss, listen, I'm really struggling right now. The pandemic's been really hard and I've got this going on and this, and I think I'm undiagnosed and I can't get in to see anybody because there's a whole other conversation about how it's practically impossible right now to find a psychiatrist or a psychologist, at least in Canada it is, who can help you. There's just not enough people. There's not enough access for people. So opening up to your boss for, I would think, the majority of people seems pretty risky.
It's scary. That's right. And your boss is not always the right place to start. And I would say for someone who's struggling, they're not sure what to do. My most important thing to say is there is always a path ahead. There is always a way ahead. And sometimes it feels like there isn't. You've tried and there's no way ahead, but I can tell you there always is. The place to start is you don't have to have money to see your family doctor, your nurse practitioner. We have virtual care in every province. There are walk-in clinics. And if the person who you go to doesn't seem to understand or isn't listening, try another. You don't have to put up with that, but there is always a path ahead. And to your point, Tamara, where you're saying, how dare they decide that Naomi said, I'm not going to go into despite the fact that she has social anxiety, I'm not going to talk to people. My mental health is worth more. My response is, how dare you question that young woman? How it's so selfish. I don't think we're practicing the golden rule. How would you like to be treated? And if you wouldn't stand directly in front of her and say, how dare you leave? How dare you not do that? Then shut up.
Family show.
Stop.
One second, I'll take on it. If someone had cancer and they said, well, I got to leave for treatment, people would be like, oh, okay, I wish you the best. It's great,
Mental health is health. People don't get it. If you're not going to say it in front of your grandmother, don't say it in front of someone else. And that's the problem with social media. I can't get bullied on social media because I'm not on social media. And that's why. Because people like Corey, who have a voice, who want to do good, and they put something out there and then they get attacked. So the first of all, there's always a path ahead. Second, go to a family doctor, nurse practitioner. If they're not listening, you're not feeling heard, go to another, because there is always a path ahead. And turn off social media, for heaven's sakes. If you're reading things that are scaring you or you're feeling piled on, turn it off. If you don't need it, don't read it.
Before I want to talk a little bit about that. I have a question for you about social media, Corey. But before we do that, we always thank our guests by donating or giving $500 to their Canadian nonprofit organization. And so, Corey, you chose Coast Mental Health. Thank you for choosing them. They will receive $500. And Diane, you chose the Union Gospel Mission, which is another great organization. And so we really appreciate you both picking the Union Gospel Mission and Coast Mental Health, and we will be giving them $500. So thank you for that. Yep.
Well, hold on. I tried to give it to the charity of Corey Hirsch first, but no. But yeah, they said no. You don't have no. Coast Mental Health has been near and dear to my heart. It's the group that's kind of forgotten after 18 years old, and they're kind of on their own, and they do a lot of work in that area. So thank you very much for that.
But Diane mentioned social media, and I know she's not on it, and I'm fascinated by that because I am on it, and everything Diane describes is so true. You're on social media, Corey. Oh, I mean, social media wasn't really around when you were playing hockey-ish. Sorry, it wasn't, right?
God.
And thank goodness it wasn't around when I was a teen. I don't know how I would have made it through, but it is around now, and you're quite outspoken. Do you get trolls? How does somebody with OCD look at social media?
Ask Diane if I get trolls.
I'm always writing to him and saying, please do not read what's going on. My son will say something's going on, and I'll call him and say, turn your social media off. Please don't. It's hard, isn't it, Corey?
It really is. And I do. But you know what? I got off Twitter. I only tweet stuff like charity and mental health stuff now. I don't talk about hockey because one day I was sitting there and I realized it's just a place for people to take free shots at me. And if somebody's typically, a kind, good person, and I do get a lot of good comments. I really do. And there's a lot of good people on it. But it's like when you go to a restaurant, it's not apt to most of the people that have a good experience that they're going to write a review. As soon as someone has a bad experience, they're the ones to write a review. And Twitter's the same way. So if it's like a place, it's like a bitch session for some people to get it out. And sometimes it's not very kind. A lot of times it's not very kind. But here's the thing. Those same people would come up to me on the street and go, hey, Corey Hirsch, can I get my picture taken with you? You were my favorite goalie. And then, here they're saying on Twitter that they'd rather stab their eyes out than listen to me for another minute, right? And that's social media. But I would get 100 great comments, and then I'd get 2, and those would be the ones I'd focus on. But Instagram, I don't mind because I can control the comments, right? I allow only people that I follow, which are my friends, and they are the only ones that are allowed to comment. So that's good. But on Twitter, it's a free for all. And it's toxic. It really is. I deleted every one of my tweets because people go back 10 years through people's tweets, and they go, "Oh, you said this when you were 12." I was 12.
Well,
really?
we know it wasn't
Right?
around when you were 12, but yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but I get
Well,
your
and I've
point,
never
right?
been to the Roxy,
But
so
you're right. It is a toxic cesspool of I totally agree with everything you just said there. So let's talk about moving forward. And you are, as an advocate, right? We hear this all the time. Oh, so and so is a mental health advocate, or, I'm really, trying to, work against the stigma and all that sort of stuff. Are we getting somewhere, Diane? Like, are we getting somewhere? Because sometimes I feel like we're not. Like, I feel like there is still a stigma. We're not open about it. We still judge people for, admitting. And then I have a two-parter here. And then I guess the other part of that is we do hear people say things like, "Oh my God, that's so OCD of me to do that," or you're going to give me anxiety by saying that. So we still use these terms like they're fun or a joke, right? So I know there was a lot of questions in there, but I know you can handle the multiple questions.
The stigma lives on. There's no doubt, but it is getting better. And most sadly for me, the stigma lives in medicine. And that's why I always try to make sure that when I tell people there's a path ahead, go to your family doctor, go to a nurse practitioner. But if you don't get the help you need, don't stop there, because there's stigma all across our society. That said, I have hope in young people being much more open about talking about their feelings, about talking about anxiety or depression. They're much more open to also supporting their friends. Think about things like being able to be out from an LGBT perspective, right? When I was in high school, I didn't know what gay was, to be honest with you. I grew up in a place where this just wasn't something that was talked about. Now we have legal gay marriage in the US. So things change slowly, but I feel like we're on the right trajectory of having these conversations, being able to be more open. I think one of the most critical things, and Corey and I have talked about this many times, we need to talk about mental health and mental illness starting in kindergarten. We got to give kids a vocabulary like we give them sexual health. Start with what parts belong to me and what do they mean and what do they do? And the same thing, because now we have young people who know that they feel worried or anxious, but they don't know, is this normal or not? And that can help. If everyone's anxious, it can diminish what real anxiety is. So we have to give people a vocabulary and a way of managing, all the snowplow parenting we've done. Maybe kids aren't as resilient as they need to be. We need to support good parenting. We need to give people a vocabulary and know when they need to get to help and then where to go to get that help.
And part of what I do is because I'm pissed. I got a chip on my shoulder. I really do. If I'd have known and been taught about OCD in high school or bipolar or any of that stuff, I would have never tried to kill myself. I would have just went to the next day to get help. But instead, we keep the information from our children. We don't tell them about it. I'll go talk in schools. Parents will pull their kids out of my talk because they think if I talk about suicide, they're going to get an idea that, and it's just so gross that way. And I'm and you can hear I'm starting to get PO just talking about it, but I'll tell you a story. So we always talked about it in my house because I knew what happened to me. And so my daughter, I always said, if you got something funky going on in your brain, come talk to me. So when she's 15, she comes to talk to me. She says, Dad, there's something not right. So I take her to the therapist and I'm like, here we go. And sure enough, she gets diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. She will never end up in the place that I ended up. And I'm very confident about that because I educated her on it and we were able to go get her help the next day when she opened up to me. Instead, I suffered for 3 years not knowing what the hell was going on and I thought it was crazy. I really did, when I could have gone to get help the next day. And it's just ludicrous to me that we don't give our children the information.
Is it shame, Diane? Like, what is it? Like, what is it, shame or fear or...
So stigma comes from fear. you don't know enough about it. So it's a lack of education and fear. I'm afraid to go there. It couldn't be me. So it makes people feel other than. So Corey, just your story is so heartening that because of what you experienced, you talked to your kids about it, and then they came forward and talked to you. And I want to touch something else that you said. Talking about suicide does not make people suicidal. And that's a fear. Well, we shouldn't talk about it. Certainly, having shows that glorify suicide, that this becomes an option without any kind of discussion about how that's not the path to take. That's concerning. But having a conversation about suicide in the context of, if you're struggling, this is where you can get help. And if you're having those thoughts, this is why you're having your thoughts. Your brain is lying to you and telling you things are hopeless and worthless and useless, and it's not true.
Yeah. So true. Wow. And it's a powerful story, Corey. And I think that, it's a different time now, or at least it feels like it. I have 3 kids also, and we're very open about the things, like we talk about all of those things. But when I was growing up, I never heard anybody talk about mental health ever, not once.
Yeah. Well, the numbers are, and Diane knows the numbers because she gave them to me. 10 to 24-year-olds, 56%, the numbers are up in suicides. Well, between the times of 2007 and 2017, and the numbers for each age group is even higher. We have a massive crisis right now with middle-aged men taking their own lives. And then there's, and I go back to a lack of education, a lack of, people not getting help when they need it. The stigma, masculinity is a strong part of it that I talk about. And then there's a massive stigma on medication. And I talk about that because I would not be here today without medication. I guarantee it. I would not be here because I wasn't able to function. I wasn't able to live. And, we don't push pharma. We're not pushing, things like that. And I'll let Diane, because she's the expert on this, but this is a lot of the information that I've learned from her. If you need medication, and you are not any less of a person for taking it. But we shame people for taking it. We don't shame people for taking drugs for cancer or diabetes. And our brains, we expect people to have perfect brains. We are just starting to understand the brain after, so many years of humanity. So to expect everybody's brain to be perfect and never break is just not feasible. And Diane, you and I talk about the stigma medication a lot, and you know more about this than I do.
I do want to make the point, the increase in suicide rate, the completed suicide in young people, those are US numbers, that 56%. Our numbers are thankfully not like that in Canada, and there's lots of reasons why in the US. We don't actually understand, there's access to guns and the fentanyl challenges, the overdose deaths, but psychiatrists don't change the whole suicide story. Really, the people that have an impact on preventing suicide are knowledgeable loved ones, schoolmates, the teachers, the people who offer that support early on and are a place like for your child, Corey, to be able to come and talk to you when they're struggling. That's how we prevent suicide. So back again to education. And on the medication front, we have this big push that everything has to be organic and natural. And I just like to point out that arsenic, natural product. No one wants to take arsenic, right? Tobacco grows in field. This is a natural product.
Heroin.
Heroin, natural product. Most drugs that I prescribe are actually rooted in natural chemicals. What happens when you need a medication, and not everyone who's mentally ill requires one, but if you have a serious mental illness, your brain is not functioning normally. You have a brain injury, and the medication can help to get you functioning again. There's other things you can do for yourself with exercise, a healthy diet, getting talk therapy, which I truly believe in, but you cannot yoga your way out of a severe depression. You can't blueberry your way out of a severe depression. If you have severe OCD or depression, often medication is your path to wellness.
And anybody who has not been on medication and then been on medication and felt that, I mean, it's like a new life, understands that. It is like an absolutely new life. And it's the idea of not being on the medication is very worrisome because of.
Most people I know are like, why haven't I done this? Like after they take it, like they're like, oh my God, but why haven't I done this before? And they held off for years.
The problem is that we have many medications, and they all work, but they don't work for every person. And that's why I'm here. And it's to try to help people to find the right treatment for the right person at the right time. And there's trial and error. There are side effects. Nothing is perfect. Tylenol has side effects. And unfortunately, there's not enough of me. So one of the great things in my role is to be able to try to find innovative solutions that amplify someone like me so that we support family practitioners, nurse practitioners, therapists in the community to be able to have, to be able to offer that kind of care. But vilifying medications is not the answer. It's trying to make sure that people have access to the care so they can find the right treatment for them.
Okay, Corey, moving forward, we need to wrap up but I do want to ask you, like, what are you looking forward to? You know, what's on the horizon for you as you head into the new year? And I'm hoping for a better 2022 than 2021.
Yeah.
But, you know, what are you looking forward to?
Well, there's just, there's one last thing. Diane is right. There's always a way. So if you're out there struggling, it took me 6 therapists to find someone before I could help me. But what am I looking forward to? Well, tonight it's Thanksgiving dinner in America, and I'm in America, so I'm looking forward to that. But no, honestly, is the Players Tribune podcast I have with Diane. I think it's going to change lives. I think it's going to help a lot of people. I have a book coming out in 2022 that's pretty much finished, just putting the finishing touches on it. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hadn't seen my daughter in 2 years due to COVID, so I got to see her, so that's exciting. God, I could just keep going on and on. And my daughter that's in Germany, she's a ballerina, doing very well. She's coming home for Christmas, so I'm going to see her at Christmas. So I'm super excited. Thank you for asking
Diane,
me
what
that.
about you? It's been a while since we've talked, so I know you're busy, but what are some things you're looking forward to so we can end on a happy note?
I too am looking forward to seeing where our podcast takes us, because I'm doing this because of Corey's heart and his wish to change the world. And I've always had that wish as well. But I think just getting to a group that is less likely to talk about mental health is really exciting. And I'm also really so excited about some of the opportunities, the innovative programs that I'm developing in my TELUS world that I actually believe it could change the world for so many people who are living with mental illness. And just to have this opportunity to do that, to impact the lives of so many, is really quite incredible. So I've got a good year ahead. I'm waiting for the plague of locusts. That seems like one thing after another, but I'm always going for the hopeful here.
I am looking forward to seeing what Diane does next, and actually working with her. She's the star of our show. She does. Yeah. I don't know what we'd do.
No, it's true. I agree with you, Corey. She's a gem. That's why she's been on this podcast more than any other guest, and there's a reason for that, because she's a gem for sure.
I'll finish with this. Wayne Gretzky never scored on me. Okay, and I think he's in therapy today because of it. So we'll throw that out there. He probably can't sleep at night because he's like, I never scored on
I didn't know that. And now that I know that, it all makes sense. Yeah, right? Yes, it really does.
It really does.
He didn't score on me either, Corey.
That's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
Okay, listen. So Corey has a website. It's CoreyHirsch.com. You can also follow Corey on Instagram, which is CoreyHirsch72. And Diane, she is at DrDianeMcIntosh.com. You can also follow her on Twitter, even though she never looks at it, at Dr. Diane McIntosh. And of course, her book is Depression, and it's very good. I highly recommend this book. This is Depression. Diane, Corey, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamara. That was wonderful. I appreciate the platform.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.